The 2025 NFL Draft is almost here, and the Philadelphia Eagles look set to dominate once again, as there are a ton of awesome prospects that the Birds could realistically add to their squad, including several star pass rushers, dynamic safeties, lockdown corners, and much more. And if we know anything about Howie Roseman, it's that he's always got something up his sleeve, and he could pull off something unexpected. So in this video, I'll break down a bunch of the Eagles' top draft targets and go over some potential moves that they could make. Plus, an NFL draft analyst also just hinted at the Birds making a massive trade up for one of the draft's top defenders. So we'll talk about that too, and we're starting right now. The wait for the 2025 NFL draft is almost over, as round 1 is set to begin at 8 p.m. on Thursday, and the entire 7-round event will last all the way through Saturday afternoon. And of course, with that, we'll welcome in the newest group of Eagles, many of which I'm sure will be really exciting prospects that could eventually turn out to be long-term pieces in Philly. Plus, that's not even mentioning the possibility of the Birds pulling the trigger on a couple draft trades, which based on recent reports seems like a very real possibility as well. So obviously this is set to be a wild couple of days, and I'm going to be covering everything here on this channel, so make sure you guys subscribe and you turn on notifications so you don't miss anything. I mean, man, there's just so much to look forward to, and as I said last week, I honestly think one of the coolest parts of draft weekend is just seeing the calls between Howie Roseman and the Birds draft picks and just hearing those conversations. But on top of that, it's also awesome just seeing the raw reactions from these guys when they get picked, because we've got some pretty awesome ones over the past few seasons. And luckily for us, the Eagles just compiled 5 of the best reactions in a recent video.
What number is this?
Yeah! NFL Draft. The Philadelphia Eagles select Jalen Hurts.
Hey, Nicole. I got
Like I said with the draft call video, it's just crazy that all these guys are Super Bowl champions now, and many of them have become core pieces here in Philadelphia, so that just shows you how good the Eagles have been at building through the draft in recent years, and I'm certainly looking forward to seeing who the Eagles pick this year and their reaction to being drafted over these next several days. Now, who exactly will the Eagles pick? Obviously, that remains to be seen, and we're going to find out real soon, but for now, we can at the very least get a pretty good idea of what position the Birds might target just based on the guys that they brought in on top 30 visits. And going back through that list, there were definitely some trends, with the Eagles bringing in 8 offensive linemen leading the position groups, followed by interior defensive linemen and cornerbacks with 5 each, then edge rusher and safety with 3 each, plus 1 local visit, I believe, and also 1 linebacker and 1 running back, along with a local visit there as well. So again, based on that, you can kind of see what positions the Eagles may target, with the trenches and secondary being at the forefront of it. And from those position groups, there's definitely a few guys who I really like and would love to see the Eagles draft. And number 1 on that list has got to be Ole Miss defensive tackle Walter Nolen, because as I've said in previous videos, he's got the potential to be an absolute monster on the interior of the defensive line at the NFL level, because not only does he have the physical tools at 6'3", 304 pounds, while also possessing great quickness and athleticism, but he also plays with a ton of physicality. He's got an extremely quick first step, he's been great against the run in college, and he also has a lot of potential as a pass rusher and has been productive there as well, putting up 7 sacks for Ole Miss's defense last season. Now, Nolan does have a little developing to do in his pass rush technique and repertoire, but given the chance to be coached up by Vic Fangio and Clint Hurt, I am very confident that they can unlock his full potential, especially since he would be playing right next to Jalen Carter at defensive tackle, who obviously is going to take up a lot of attention. And like I've said before, I think Carter and Nolan would form a scary duo on the interior of the Eagles' defensive line. So if the Eagles get the chance to get him, I think they should be all over it. And with reports suggesting that Nolan could fall a little bit, it seems like the Eagles may actually have a chance to trade up and get him in the first round. Or so I thought, I guess, because according to Adam Schefter on 97.5 The Fanatic on Wednesday morning, Walter Nolen falling to the point where the Eagles can get him isn't looking super likely at this point.
Philadelphia got lucky on Jalen Carter. It's not going to get lucky on Walter Nolen like that, okay? That's not going to happen. I don't think he's falling to 32. I would expect that he's gone, I would say somewhere in the teens would be my guess. You could just look at the teams that are picking there and the teams that need defensive line help. Like, could you see Atlanta take him? Yes. Could you see Arizona? Yes. Could you see Cincinnati? Yes. I mean, I don't think he's getting through to 32.
Yeah, so that's certainly not ideal, but you never do know how things are going to play out, so we'll just have to wait and see what happens. Personally, I'm still holding out hope for Nolan to slip maybe into the 20s just to give the Eagles some sort of chance to go trade up and get him, but again, based on these comments from Schefter, it doesn't seem super likely at this point, but who knows, maybe those reported character concerns could end up being a more pressing issue for some of these teams that are picking in the teens and they pass on them, so again, we'll see what happens. But now, someone who potentially could be in a similar situation to Nolan is Tennessee edge rusher James Pearce Jr., as like Nolan, character concerns could reportedly cause him to fall a little bit in the first round, and if he gets anywhere near 32, then the Eagles should be interested in trading up to go get him, because even though the Birds didn't have a reported top 30 visit with him, Pearce is still one of the most talented edge rushers in the entire draft, and the Birds have still been rumored to have interest in him. I mean, Pearce is an athletic freak, standing at 6'5", 245 pounds, and having ran a blazing fast 4.47 40-yard dash. And pair that with a physical play style, great bend around the edge, and an extremely fast first step, and a natural ability in both stopping the run and rushing the passer, and that's a guy that I would love the Eagles to find a way to go get, especially with the departure of Josh Sweat and Brandon Graham's retirement in the offseason. So hopefully the opportunity presents itself because, again, Pearce is one of my top first-round targets for Philadelphia. And I feel the same way about another edge rusher in Boston College's Donovan Ezaraku, as the Philly/New Jersey native is also considered one of the top players at his position in this draft class. And that's for good reason, as not only is he a great athlete, having run a 4.62 40-yard dash, which was in the top 90% of edge rushers, while also having an RAS score of 8.28, but he was also super productive in college, putting up 20.5 tackles for loss last year, along with an insane school record of 16.5 sacks. So obviously, Ezaraku is a natural pass rusher who's got a lot of moves in his bag and consistently finds ways to win. Plus, he's got crazy bend around the edge, a quick first step, and a high motor. So, despite the concerns with his size being just 6'2", 248 pounds, I still think he can be a really good NFL player. I mean, heck, Brandon Graham's 6'2", and he was just a little heavier, and Nolan Smith is 6'2", and actually lighter than Ezaraku is. So, that size issue doesn't scare me at all because I do think he has the skill set to be a good player. So, again, I'd love Donovan Ezaraku as a first-round target for Philly. And then moving on, someone else who I and many other Eagles fans like as a first-round target is Georgia's safety Malachi Starks, because one, not only would it be really cool to add another Philly dog to the mix, but Starks is just one of the best safeties in this entire class behind South Carolina's Nick Amanwari, who, by the way, I'd love to get him too, but I just don't think that's as realistic. But getting back to Starks, the guy's just a really good all-around safety, given the fact that he's got good speed, he plays physical, he's a great tackler, he's really good against the run, and he's also got great ability in zone coverage and has good ball skills too. So if the Eagles aren't super confident in Sidney Brown or Lewis Cine and they want to get a starting safety, then I think Starks would make a ton of sense as somebody they could trade up for in the first round. And someone else who I think makes a lot of sense for the Eagles maybe on day 2 is Ohio State defensive tackle Tyleik Williams, as this is somebody who was very productive in college, having had 99 tackles and 18 tackles for loss over his past 2 seasons at Ohio State. Plus, he's very good against the run, being graded as one of the highest defensive tackles in college in that area. He's also super physical. He's got a great bull rush move that has allowed him to be effective in getting after the quarterback, and he also moves really well for somebody who's 330 pounds. So, again, as a day 2 pick, I really like the idea of Tyleik Williams going to Philadelphia. And I feel similarly about Texas A&M edge rusher Nick Scourton, as he's a prospect who's versatile enough to play different positions. He plays with good power, but also has good quickness and athleticism off the edge. He also has great ability both stopping the run and rushing the passer, and his spin move specifically has been really effective for him in college and will likely to continue to be that and be a go-to move for him at the NFL level. So again, Scourton's another guy I like for the Eagles at edge rusher. And then moving back to the secondary, there's a couple corners that I would like for the Eagles as well, starting with Ole Miss's Trey Amos, who's projected to go likely on day 2 of the draft. And this is a guy that both has good size at 6'1" and plays with physicality at the corner position, but he also has some great speed, having been a former track athlete and running a 4.43 40-yard dash, which is pretty good for that size. Not to mention that he's got some elite ball skills and a great ability to break on the football quickly, while he's also great around the line of scrimmage and in tackling situations. So if the Eagles want some competition for Kelee Ringo and a future starter at corner, Amos would make a ton of sense. And so would Maxwell Hairston, as the Kentucky product is one of the best corners in the entire draft class and could possibly be a day 2 or even first round option for Philly, considering that he's set to attend the draft on Thursday night. And Hairston's a guy with a lot of exciting traits, including some great athleticism, having run a 4.28 40-yard dash and having a vertical of near 40 inches, not to mention his natural ability in zone coverage, his aggressive play style, and his elite ball skills. So again, look out for Hairston as a possible cornerback target for Philly. And then moving on, we have somebody who I talked about in my last video in UCLA edge rusher, Alua Fei Aljo. And while sure, in that video, I said I wouldn't really be a fan of picking him in the first round as was being speculated, I do think as a potential day 2 pick, he makes a ton of sense, just given that he still has a ton of untapped potential, with him having just moved from off-ball linebacker to edge rusher this past season. And if that potential could be unlocked, then he could be a really, really good NFL player. Plus, he's obviously got the versatility to be moved around to different spots on defense. He plays physical, and he's got a super high motor. So again, as a day 2 pick, if he were to get there, I definitely like him. And same goes for offensive lineman Donovan Jackson, as the Ohio State Buckeye looks to have all the makings of a good NFL offensive lineman, as he's got good size, good strength, he's solid in both pass protection and run blocking, and while he's projected to mainly be a guard at the NFL level, he's got the versatility to play both guard and tackle. So if the Birds want competition for Tyler Steen at right guard, or they just want a future plan and get a guy in here that can eventually take over at that spot when Steen's contract expires, or even if they want an eventual replacement for Lane Johnson, I think Jackson could actually make a lot of sense. And that's not even close to all the prospects that I think would make a lot of sense for the Eagles or that I'd like to see them go after. I mean, those were just 10 guys who I personally like that have also been linked to the Birds in one way or another, 90% of them through top 30 visits. But there's so many more exciting prospects that the Eagles could go after during this draft, many of them being in later rounds that I just don't have time to talk about in one video. Plus, I haven't even talked about the tight end position, as even though Philly didn't bring any of those guys in on top 30 visits, it's looking extremely likely that they will take one at some point, whether that's LSU's Mason Taylor, who Philly has been linked to a lot in recent weeks, or Bowling Green's Harold Fannin Jr., who of course was coached by now Eagles quarterbacks coach Scott Loeffler in college. And you also got Miami's Elijah Arroyo, Texas's Gunnar Helm, and Oregon's Terrence Ferguson, just to name a few more. And personally, I really do think the Eagles are going to end up taking one of these guys, especially with it looking like Dallas Goedert could be traded during the draft. Speaking of which, we did just potentially get an update regarding that, as former Eagles offensive coordinator and now Colts head coach Shane Steichen said that Indy is looking to add a pass-catching tight end in the draft, and with the Colts already having been a rumored destination for Dallas Goedert just with the Steichen connection and their need at that spot, these comments from the former Eagles OC have only made those rumors even louder. So I'm curious to know what you guys think. Like, obviously at this point we know the situation with Goddard, with him set to enter the last year of his contract with no guaranteed money, while the Eagles are looking to save cap space any way they can. And all the recent reports have suggested that Goddard could be traded during the draft. So I'm curious to know whether you guys think a trade is actually going to happen, and if it does, where do you think Goddard could end up? Moving on though, we did also just get some interesting buzz on another trade that the Eagles could make in the NFL draft, specifically that being a trade up for Georgia linebacker Jaylen Walker. As on John Clark's Takeoff podcast, Daniel Jeremiah speculated that if teams overthink Walker and he starts to drop, then the Eagles can make a trade up to go get him.
I'm sure we'll get to it because we always talk about what we think could happen there and what the predictions might be. It's impossible to make a prediction of who's going to be there at 32, but I will make a prediction. Like if for some reason people overthink Jaylen Walker like they overthought Nolan Smith, and he's not big enough, and the size, like if he starts to drift and drop, I'm like, oh my gosh, they could just go do the exact same thing all over again.
Look, if Jaylen Walker starts to fall and he gets towards the end of the first round and the Eagles have a chance to make a trade up and get him, then I'd be all for it. Because not only would that make Walker another Philly dog, but the guy's just immensely talented, possibly being the best linebacker in the draft with crazy athleticism and the versatility to rush off the edge and also play off-ball linebacker. And he could come in right away and be an immediate impact star for Philly's defense. So if the Eagles could somehow trade up and get Walker, I would be absolutely over the moon. Now, do I think this is actually going to happen? No, but it is something to think about. And honestly, regardless of what they do or who they pick, it's just hard to imagine that they don't walk away from the draft being massive winners. I mean, year after year, we have seen Howie Roseman and the Eagles dominate the draft, and I expect nothing less this year, whether that's making great picks or swinging great draft day trades, which, by the way, reports have suggested again that the Eagles are looking to make quite a few of those, possibly one or two to add a veteran player. And I mean, in regards to Philly's draft day dominance, it's gotten to the point where other GMs around the league are wary of Howie and the Eagles whenever he calls them to make a deal, with Adam Schefter revealing that one GM joked with him saying, quote, "We are blocking all calls from the 215 area code to our facility." Oh, and also, in other recent Eagles news, the Birds did just make a pretty big decision on one of their current players as they declined the 5th-year option for wide receiver Jahan Dodson. And honestly, this is no surprise, nor do I think it really means anything, just considering that Dodson's 5th-year option would have been for $16.6 million, so there was no way the Eagles were ever going to pick that up for a wide receiver 3, even if I do think he's a pretty good one. So, with that, Dodson's going to play one more year in his current contract, and then he'll be a free agent in 2026. But now, all that said, and I'm just super fired up to see what the Eagles can pull off in this draft, and you guys know that I'm going to be covering everything. So again, if you don't want to miss any of that, then make sure you subscribe and you turn on notifications. That way, you know instantly when I upload a video or go live. Again, you're not going to want to miss any of my draft coverage. And also, just leave a like down below to show some support because it really does help me out a ton. Let's see if we can get to 500 likes on today's video. And also, leave a comment down below. Who do you want the Eagles to draft? Let me know your #1 target down in the comments below. And also, if you want to watch another Eagles video, you can check this one out right here. And now with all that being said, that's pretty much all I got for this one, guys. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.